COVID-19 pandemic. This is Madawaska Valley's first virtual planning meeting. We will endeavor to conduct this meeting following the normal process, but please note that unanticipated issues that may arise could affect that process. I'd like to thank the applicants for their understanding of the need to organize this meeting through the use of technology. The municipality has made every effort to ensure all affected property owners were informed and are able to participate in this planning process. And Sue, I'll ask you to note.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the purposes of the Planning Act is to provide for planning processes that are open, accessible, timely, and efficient. Accordingly, all written submissions, documents, correspondence, emails, or other communications, including your name and address, form part of the public record and will be disclosed, made available by the municipality to such persons as municipality sees fit, including anyone requesting such information. Accordingly, in providing such information, you shall be deemed to have consented to its use and disclosure as part of the planning process.
Thank you. Application number 1, file number PAS-2019-04. The purpose is to hear persons' comments in regards to zoning bylaw amendment. Application made by the applicant, Robert B. Howe of Howe and Bradley Professional Corporation, owners Raphael A. Pastway and Paula A. Pastway. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Lorbetsky. There he is. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayor Love. Before we actually proceed with the application, I just want to clarify a couple of things. Unfortunately, on the notices that were sent out on each application, I had indicated that submissions were due Thursday noon, May the 29th. That was incorrect. It was supposed to be May 28th. And just for clarification, because of my error, I have been submitting or entertaining all submissions right up until this morning. And therefore, there are a number of amendments to the agenda. So I will just go, just for the record, to indicate what those amendments will be. And you don't have to maybe do anything. I have highlighted them on my agenda, and I will speak to them as they come up. The first amendment will be with respect to the encroachment agreement. It's item 2.3. And the next items are on the Hope Derbyshire application, items 15.1. In that area, it'll be 15.2. The actual survey was provided by the surveyor. And that was with respect to condition number 1 of the severance application. And then there's an addition of 15.3, the development agreement relating to condition number 4 in regard to the severance application was submitted by the law firm of Howe and Bradley by Courtney this morning, and that relates to condition number 4. Going on to the Dunlop 2020-06, there are submissions that were exchanged in council, and everyone was provided with those additional or with that additional information. Item number 34.9, that was my response to the unanswered questions to Mr. Gullis's email, which I provided to him, and I missed the deadline by a few minutes. I said I was going to do it in the morning, and I got there, I believe, maybe shortly after lunch. Item 34. Thank you. Item 34.1, this morning I received, after discussions with Ms. Burnett concerning the amendment to the application, which has been verified by an Ontario land surveyor. And the request in the documentation initially was 17-meter setback, and the request is now 15.5 meters, which has been confirmed by the surveyor. So the other item that I did or will be amended is item number 37. The draft bylaw will be changed from 17 meters to 15.5 meters. So hopefully I haven't confused everybody, but be patient with me. I am a bit frazzled with all of this, and I will try to do my best to make sure that everyone gets the information. And if there's something that I am omitting, Mayor Love, please correct me. So
Oh,
I will
goodness.
start with the passed-away application, PAS-2019-04. Item number 2.1, the application was dated April the 18th, 2019. Notice of incomplete application was dated May the 15th, 2019. And I'll just stop there. The reason for the incomplete application, there were some issues that arose with respect to environmental testing and whatnot. So that was the reason for the delay there. Item 2.3 is the letter from Howe and Bradley dated February the 24th, 2020. And there is the bylaw requirement for an encroachment agreement. And to elaborate with respect to that, the former building that was located on this property encroached onto the municipal road allowance. And there has been a demolition permit obtained and the building has been removed off of the road allowance. There currently exists an encroachment agreement with the former owner, Mr. Andre Kaminsky, and it is requested by the applicants that an encroachment agreement be entertained with respect to the well that has been located on the road allowance. It's a drilled well. So in regard to that, I had discussions or email exchanges with the law office, and there were a couple of items that were added to the amended agreement that was provided yesterday. One of them was that there be barriers put in around the well, just to ensure that there isn't someone that is using that road allowance would interfere with the well. And furthermore, there is a fence that is encroaching onto the shoreline road allowance. And I have been told by staff that there was an existing fence there many, many years ago, and that this is a replacement of that fence. And are there any questions so far from anyone in regard to these items?
Okay, are there any questions from council? Silas, at this point, did you want us to mention anything that in the updated encroachment agreement that we have noticed?
Yes, you may do it now so that we don't miss it.
Okay, so I do just have a couple of questions I want to ask about. In terms of putting the barrier around the well, will it have night reflective markings because that access is used at night? So I just want to make sure that the barriers can be seen by traffic. So if they have something reflective, should that be included? I just want to ensure they're not accidentally hit. Okay, Courtney? Okay, Ms. Burnett, if you wanted to speak to that.
Yes, good morning. So yes, I'm Courtney Burnett. And so I did have conversations with Mr. Passaway yesterday. And to add maybe a little bit more context, right now, the well itself is kind of surrounded by a lilac bush that's actually there. So right now, the fear of somebody running into it is very low, but Mr. Passaway is very open and has a plan to kind of create something a little bit more permanent. And I'm more than sure he'd be happy to add something that would be reflective to be able to kind of avert any oncoming traffic maybe in the evening, that's for sure.
Okay, I don't have a concern with that. My concern was that by the time we get this done, the lilac bush may have vanished. I just want to ensure that the well is very clearly marked and able to be seen at night so that there's no doubt that it's there. And I have no concern with giving the encroachment agreement. My second question on that would be, it does say that the municipality shall not be liable for any damages. And would that include being liable for the quality of the water produced by the well? And I think probably Courtney, again, you would be the one that could answer that. Is that encapsulated in that 4.2 of the encroachment agreement?
I guess I would say that it is, if I may answer, because it, you know, if the water quality wasn't there, certainly that would have an impact on the value of the property. And this says the municipality wouldn't be liable for any diminution in value of the owner's land. So I would say it is, and certainly I think it would be difficult for Mr. Passaway, having received this permission from the township, which is not as of right to, to complain about the water quality, but in any event, I would say, in my opinion, that is covered by that clause.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to ensure that it was well understood that the municipality isn't ensuring quality water, and I'm sure Mr. Pastway understands that. And my final thing on the encroachment agreement is, should there be a renewal clause in this agreement for a further 10-year period? Something that ensures that 10 years from now, the next council is going to look at this, but is going to be ensuring that this can be renewed, because there's no renewal clause here at all. And I would imagine the house is going to stand significantly more than 10 years. And it is such a small lot that you would be hard to put a different water source on that lot. So asking, should there be a renewal clause?
I guess my opinion has been that these types of encroachment bylaws or agreements can't be perpetual, shall we say, and that that a council in the future not be bound to continue it. But I don't think it would hurt, and in fact, I'd be pleased if we could maybe make that a little, make it apparent that the agreement could be extended by saying that it will expire, and that was the duration of the previous agreement or bylaws, I recall, but that it may be renewed. So again, it doesn't bind the municipality, but certainly creates the notion that it could be renewed. And as you have said, certainly probably the life of the well and the dwelling it's serving would potentially extend beyond 10 years. So my suggestion would be that it, just that a phrase be added at the end of that clause that says, but may be renewed, or words to that effect.
Does council have any concern with that? Anything I've asked about? Councillor Kaplinski.
Yes, Mayor Love, you're addressing something that was of a concern to me. And I think that Mr. Howe has got the answer by having a little caveat on that. And I think it should be I would agree that it should be at the request of the landowner, and of course in agreement with the township. I don't see any reason why there would be an objection. It's been renewed many times under that same sort of system. And but I think it should be indicated in that agreement. So I feel much better having that there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any concerns with the addition of a renewal clause that would just indicate that this is a renewable agreement? Okay, I don't see any objections. So if everyone else is good with that, then maybe I should ask Mr. Pastway if he has any concerns with a renewal clause or anything that I've asked for. No? Okay.
No, that's good.
Okay, so we're good with that. So Mr. Levetsky, could we then continue?
Yes. Item 2.5 is the County of Renfrew Planning Division Zoning Bylaw Amendment Report to Council, dated May the 11th, 2020. Are there any concerns or questions relating to that report?
Okay, I don't see any. I guess we can continue.
Item number 3, the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from highway commercial HC to residential 1 exception 67 R1-E67 to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling on the property. The amendment would reduce the minimum lot area from 4,050 square meters to 1,290 square meters, reduce the exterior side yard width from 7.5 meters to 3 meters, and reduce the minimum water frontage from 45 meters to 13 meters. All other provisions of the zoning bylaw shall apply. Item number 4, report on application and notice. The notice and application and public meeting were sent out to all affected property owners within 120 meters, which converts to 400 feet of the subject application, and to all public bodies as required on May the 11th, 2020. Item 4.2, notice was posted on the subject property on May the 11th, 2020. Item number 5, notice to public bodies, written responses and/or telephone messages. I received one, item 5.1, from Ontario Power Generation, Inc., email dated May the 12th, 2020, and they have no comments or concerns. And item number 6, written comments, there were none. Item number 7, verbal report or on general or telephone inquiries and or attendances at the municipal office. Unfortunately, no one could attend at the office, and there were none.
Okay, thank you. Are there any oral or written presentations by those in attendance? If you want to speak to this, if you could turn on your video and put up your hand, that would be helpful. And I would start with going to the applicant and Mr. Howe first for his comments. I don't see any other hands though. So Mr. Howe, did you want to speak to this application?
Well, maybe only to point out that this was an existing lot of record, obviously significantly undersized, but it's existed for a long time at that size and of course can't be enlarged. And other than that, I note that Mr. Pasquay is in attendance, and I would only ask that he be given the opportunity to make any comment that he would care to make. This, I would just go on to say too, Mr. Lorbetsky alluded to it briefly, but Mr. Pasquay has had to do what's called a record of site condition, because this is a change from a commercial zone to a residential zone, and that involved significant environmental investigations and ultimately a satisfactory report from a consulting engineer that was also vetted by the Ontario ministry that looks after these things. So that's just some of the background and accounts, as Silas mentioned, perhaps for some of the delay. So again, unless Mr. Pasquay has anything to add, I think I've said my piece.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pasquay, did you want to speak to this?
Well, you can see why the previous building was built on the road allowance, I guess, because the lot was extremely small. So that's why we're asking for that variance, is to make it fit on the lot without moving the well. It accommodates what we're trying to achieve. And it is in downtown Combermere, big metropolis, and we're trying to make it look somewhat better. So with your acceptance, we hope to move forward with that very shortly. So that's
Okay,
all.
thank you very much. Now, once again, for our last time, I'll ask if there's anyone else who wants to speak to this application, any other members of the public. Not seeing anyone. So we'll move to questions and discussion by council. Are there any questions? Does council have any questions or any comments? Not seeing any hands up. I think council is well aware. On a site visit recently to this very location in regards to the road allowance, that this will certainly be an improvement to downtown Combermere to have this new building go up and to have the lot redeveloped. So very pleased to see this. I guess at this point then, Mr. Lorbetsky, will go to your next item.
Just before we move on, I will just want to make one clarification with respect to the encroachment agreement. That will need to be passed by bylaw, but we can't do that until such time as council has made a decision on this application, whether to grant or deny the application.
Okay, thank you. And that decision will be made at the special council meeting this afternoon when the bylaw will come to council.
Okay, thank you. I will move on to the next application, application number 2.
Did you want me to read that?
Please.
Okay. Application number 2, HOP 2020-04. The purpose is to hear persons' comments in regard to zoning bylaw amendment made by the applicant, Courtney A. Burnett of Howe and Bradley Professional Corporation, owner Patricia Hope Derbyshire Kosnowski. And now Mr. Lorbetsky, please.
Yes, this application is a follow-up of a condition that was implemented by the County of Renfrew with respect to the severance application that has been before council, which has application was approved to move forward. So this is a follow-up to those conditions. Item 11.1, the application was dated March the 11th, 2020. Item 11.2 is page 1. cover letter from the County of Renfrew. It's dated March the 24th, 2020. Item number 11.3, County of Renfrew Planning Division zoning bylaw amendment report to council dated March 24th, 2020. At this point, I will ask if council has any concerns with respect to the report.
Okay, members of council, anyone with any questions at this point? I'm not seeing anything, so please continue.
Item number 12, the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the severed lands in consent file number B50/19 from limited service residential LSR to limited service residential exception 59 LSR-E59 to prohibit a dwelling, and to rezone the retained lands in consent file B50/19 from limited service residential LSR to limited service residential exception 58 LSR-E58 to reduce the minimum lot area from 4,050 square meters to 3,775 square meters. All other provisions of the zoning bylaw amendment shall apply. Item number 13, report on the application and notice. 13.1, notice of complete application dated March 25th, 2020. Item number 13.2, the notice of application and public meeting were sent to all affected property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject application, and to all public bodies as required on May the 11th, 2020. Item 13.3, notice was posted on the subject property on May 11th, 2020. And there shouldn't be the word none after that. That's an error. Item number 14, notice to public bodies, written responses and/or telephone messages. 14.1, Ontario Power Generation Inc., email dated May the 12th, 2020, have no concerns subject to license of occupation number 7345. That is the normal response I get from the Ontario Power Generation with anything that is done in and around Lake Kaministiquia, Madawaska River. So in this case, we're dealing with lands that are not actually fronting on the water. They're in behind, but will be tied to the parcels that are located on the water. Item number 15, written comments. 15.1, email from Dr. Terry Vanderheyden and response dated May 28, 2020. Dr. Vanderheyden is an abutting owner, and he just needed more detail, and an email response with copies of the application were subsequently forwarded to him, and he replied thanking me for it, had no comments. And here is where I have added item 15.2. It is the survey of the property that is being severed, and that is condition number 1 of the severance application. And 15.3 is the development agreement, which is condition number 4, which I received this morning and was provided to everyone this morning for review. I know it was short notice. However, as I say, it's just to inform council that conditions are being satisfied. One of the other things that I can add is that there is some urgency with respect to all of these agreements and everything happening, because it is my understanding that Ms. Hope Derbyshire has sold her property and may be closing. However, this has been all taken care of by the law firm, that anything that may happen after the will continue. So there will also be a special council meeting required to pass this development agreement, and we may tie that into the same meeting as was the case with Mr. Passway with the development agreement.
Okay, thank you. Are there any oral or written presentations by those in attendance? I'll start with going to the applicant, Ms. Burnett, and first get her comments, if any, on the application, and then if there's anyone else who wishes to speak to it, please put your hand up at that point.
One where the lodge is, and then acres, and then there's the other one.
Andy?
The other side, there's no 911 number.
Andy, could you turn off your mic, please? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to Ms. Burnett and see if there's anything you wish to speak to on this application before I take comments from the public.
Thank you, Mayor Love. So not too much to add. We certainly appreciate council's help in kind of getting this done quickly. I know we're kind of in uncertain times with all of this COVID-19. It's certainly appreciated that we're figuring out this first ever online, public meeting. And so I think it's true that Ms. Hope Koznowski has entered into an agreement in order to sell her property, but we have made sure that we've put into place terms in that contract that if something were to happen to hold this up and we aren't able to get all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted before June 29th, that this would certainly still be able to be carried through with the new owners, but we remain hopeful that this can all pass before June 29th kind of commences.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the public want to speak to this application? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so I will move on to questions and discussion by council. Did any member of council have any questions or wish to discuss this? Not seeing anything. This one is pretty straightforward. The severance for this lot addition has been granted provisional consent by the Renfrew County Land Division Committee. So this zoning bylaw amendment is just a condition of consent. Okay, I don't see any concerns from council. Mr. Lerbetsky, did you want to speak to the draft bylaw?
I think it's self-explanatory what the requirements are, and there's nothing further to add.
Okay, and that bylaw will also be coming to council at the special council meeting this afternoon. Okay, with that then, if there's nothing further on that application, we'll move to application number 3, which is COG-2020-05. Purpose is to hear persons' comments in regards to a zoning bylaw amendment. Application made by the applicant, Howe and Bradley Professional Corporation, owner James D. Coughlin. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Lerbetsky to speak to this application.
Thank you, Mayor Love. Item number 20.1, the application was received. It's dated March 24, 2020. Item number 20.2, page 1 of cover letter from the County of Renfrew, dated April 9th, 2020. And item number 20.3, County of Renfrew Planning Division Zoning Bylaw Amendment Report to Council, dated April the 9th, 2020. And once again, if there are any questions regarding the report?
Okay, any questions from council? I'm not seeing any questions, so please continue.
Okay, item 21. The purpose and effect of the amendment is to rezone the retained lands in consent file number B13/17 from limited service residential LSR to limited service residential exception 60 LSR-E60 to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 45 meters to 6 meters and to permit an existing sleep cabin. The amendment will also rezone the severed lands in consent file number B13/17 from limited service residential LSR to limited service residential exception 61 LSR-E61 to reduce the minimum lot area from 4,050 square meters to 3,270 square meters, to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 45 meters to 6 meters, and to reduce the minimum water frontage from 45 meters to 36.5 meters. All other provisions of the zoning bylaw shall apply. Item number 22, report on the application and notice. 22.1, notice of complete application dated April the 9th, 2020. Item 22.2, the notice of application and public meeting were sent out to all affected property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject application, and to all public bodies as required on May the 11th, 2020. Please note that I had a typo in that notice. The reference was incorrect as to the year with respect to the severance application, and that has been pointed out by, I believe it was Nikki Smith or someone, but it has been duly noted. Item 22.3, notice was posted on subject property on May the 11th, 2020. Item number 23, notice to public bodies, written responses and or telephone messages. That should not say none. There was one from Ontario Power Generation, email dated May the 12th, 2020. No concerns, subject to license of occupation number 73.54. Same comments as on the previous application. Written comments, 24.1, email from Carolina Savard dated May 24th, 2020. 24.2, email from Nikki Smith dated May 24th, 2020. 24.3, email response to Carolina Seward and Nikki Smith dated May the 25th, 2020. Item 24.4, email from Carolina Seward dated May the 26th, 2020. And item 24.5, email response to Carolina Seward and Nikki Smith dated May 26th, 2020. So that whole list of emails was all the questions that the abutting landowners had, and hopefully were answered. I don't know if they're in attendance at the meeting. I don't believe I see them as participants. So I must have successfully been able to answer their inquiries. So I hope council has had a chance to review all those comments and are taking all of those into consideration. Item number 25, verbal report on general or telephone inquiries and or attendances at the municipal office. 25.1, telephone inquiry by Pat and Wilma Wernham regarding lot size and frontage. They have no objections. They were just concerned with respect to the reduction of the lot size. It wasn't that they were objecting to the application. I believe that they are in the process of trying to get a severance on a similar basis with a smaller footprint as well. And it was just general questions that they had. So there's nothing further to add there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any oral or written presentations by those in attendance? If there's anyone here who wants to speak to this application, please turn on your video, put up your hand so I know. And I will, first off, I will go to the applicant, and I'm not sure, Mr. Howe, is it you who's going to speak? And I'll ask you for your comments.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Coughlin has owned this property for quite some time. He purchased a short road allowance quite some time ago. He is bounded on the north generally by the Wernhams, and to the south by the Smith family. The access to the Coughlin property and the Smith parcels is via a lane. It's called Coughlin Lane that comes off Wernham Road and goes over Crown Land and then over the corner of Mr. Coughlin's property and then across the unopened road allowance between concessions 8 and 9 and then on to the Smith parcels. So at any rate, Mr. Coughlin decided he'd like to create a lot from his fairly large property. He plans, he tells me, to convey it to his son, who may very well build a cottage on it. The severance application, you may have noticed, and Silas pointed out, was actually submitted in 2017. There's been quite a bit of dialogue with the Land Division Committee to design this application, dealing with the fact of the status of Coughlin Lane on Crown Land and its existing course. So what we've ended up with is what you see, with a lot that's somewhat smaller than the prescribed minimum, with somewhat less than the prescribed water frontage, and the access is over this Coughlin Lane, and this accounts for the tail, if I can call it that, from the retained parcel that extends all the way out to the unopened road allowance, crosses Coughlin Lane in the process, and then the fact that the severed parcel will require a right of way just over that narrow tail of the retained parcel if one is to follow Coughlin Lane as it exists on the ground. So the last adjustment, I guess, made was with respect to the jog in the limit between the retained and severed parcels to reduce the frontage on the severed parcel to 36.5 meters. Obviously, overall, there's plenty of frontage, and theoretically, one could have allowed 45 meters on the water for the severed parcel, but there's physical features here, natural physical features, I'm told, and also, as has been pointed out, the existence of this sleep cabin on the retained parcel. That's an existing building. So in the end, this is the configuration that was adopted and ultimately approved provisionally by the Land Division Committee. The sleep cabin is on the retained parcel. The retained parcel is not 0.8 hectares as the bylaw requires for a sleep cabin, but slightly less than that at 66.66 hectares. The other thing I would point out is that there is this unopened road allowance between the Coghlan property and the Smith properties to the south, which does create, you know, a bit of a buffer, natural buffer, if you like, because it's there. So that there is 66 feet of space, if I can use that expression, between the severed parcel that may be built on by Mr. Coghlan's son and the properties of the inquirers. So at any rate, the amendments have been indicated as the ones that are required. This business of reducing the lot frontage is because lot frontage is not on the water, it's on the access. And of course, in this case, it's 6 meters or 20 feet or so, which is the approximate width of Coghlan Lane, which being on Crown land, I guess, has no specific width. And to recognize that the severed parcel is somewhat undersized and again ends up with slightly less than the prescribed water frontage as well. There was another condition of the provisional consent dealing with the the floodplain and the elevation, and that's been satisfied by the preliminary survey that Mr. Simpson prepared and has been reviewed by the Land Division Committee. So certainly Mr. Coghlan has made an investment in this project. The Land Division Committee has seen fit to approve it subject to certain conditions, and Mr. Coghlan would be pleased if the council saw fit to make the adjustments to the zoning bylaw that are required to regularize the whole thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, is there any member of the public here who wants to speak to this application? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Are there any questions or is there any discussion by council? Once again, as Mr. Howe has mentioned, this severance has been granted by the Renfrew County Land Division Committee, and this zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of that consent. All right, I don't see anything, so I will move back to Mr. Lurbetsky for number 28.
Yes, the copy of the draft bylaw is prepared by the County of Renfrew to coincide with the requirements of the zoning amendment that were just spoken to.
Okay, and that again is coming to the special council meeting this afternoon, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing further on that application, we'll move to application number 4, which is DUN-2020-06. The purpose is to hear persons' comments in regards to zoning bylaw amendment, application made by the applicant, Courtney A. Burnett, Howe and Bradley Professional Corporation. Owners, Gregory J. Dunlop and Diane Colleen Dunlop. And Mr. Lurbetsky, I will turn it over to you to take us through the process.
Thank you, Mayor Love. Item 29.1, the application received was dated May the 25th, March 25th, 2020. Item 29.2, page 1, cover letter from the County of Renfrew, dated April 21st, 2020. Item 29.3, County of Renfrew Planning Division Zoning Bylaw Amendment Report to Council, dated April the 21st, 2020. Before we move on to questions, if you note in the agenda item number 36, there is the recommendation from Mr. Cheeseman. So we will discuss that at that point because a resolution will be required of council to make a decision on those comments. So are there any other comments or concerns with the report?
Okay, council, does anyone have any comments or concerns so far? All right. I do note that this application was submitted the day before The official plan amendment number 25 for the County of Renfrew came into effect. So the very next day, any applications received as of March 26, 2020 are going to have to be submitted after, are going to be subject to more restrictions based on this new official plan amendment that the province has seen fit to modify our application and make it even more difficult to develop in Renfrew County. So it should just be noted for council's information. This application is still under the official plan that did exist prior to March 26, 2020. Mr. Lebeski, have I got that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yes, so we're still dealing with the old set of rules, but there are now a new set of rules, and I know council will be getting more information on those. And as I say, County Council is not very happy, to say the least. There's a lot more restrictions on development now. All right, so did you want to continue then?
Thank you, Mayor Love. Item number 30. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone a waterfront property that is 0.5 hectares, 1.28 acres in area to reduce the minimum water setback from Pog Lake from 30 meters to 17 meters. And I'll stop there. There is a subsequent request to clarify that measurement in order to permit the replacement of an existing cottage with a larger cottage. The effect of the amendment is to rezone the subject lands from limited service residential, LSR, to limited service residential, exception 62, LSR-E62. All other provisions of the zoning bylaw shall apply. Item number 31, report on application and notice. 31.1, notice of complete application dated April the 23rd, 2020. Item 31.2, the notice of application and public meeting were sent out to all affected property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject application, and to all public bodies as required on May the 11th, 2020. Item 31.3, the notice was posted on the subject property on May the 11th, 2020. Item number 32, notice to public bodies, written responses and or telephone messages. Once again, none. And the reason that none appeared there when I first published the agenda, I got subsequent responses from Ontario Power Generation. So item 32.1, Ontario Power Generation Inc., email dated May the 12th, 2020, no comments or concerns. Number 33, written comments. 34.1, email sent to Richard Trybursky dated May the 19th, 2020. Item 34.2, email response from Richard Trybursky dated May 19th, 2020. No objections. Item 34.3, email from Paul Gullis dated May the 19th, 2020. Item 34.4, email response sent to Paul Gullis dated May the 19th, 2020. Item 34.5, email from Paul Gullis dated May 27th, 2020. Item 34.6, email response sent to Paul Gullis dated May the 27th, 2020. 34.7, email from Paul Gullis dated May the 28th, 2020. Item 34.8, email response sent to Paul Gullis dated May 28, 2020. And item number 34.9, which I just added this morning, unanswered questions were the response to Paul Gullis's unanswered questions, pardon me. And item number 34.10, email letter requesting or clarification and requesting the amendment from 17 meters to 15.5 meters from Ms. Burnett. So I'll stop there, and I think with the number of emails and exchanges, I'm hoping that council and everyone has read through them, and I must publicly thank Ms. Burnett for helping me answer Mr. Gullis's questions, because I was frazzled in trying to get the agenda prepared for this meeting, and I thank you for that. And I thank Mr. Gullis for him incorporating all of those answers into one locations so that it was easier for council to understand and appreciate, and it was much easier for me to answer the unanswered questions. So I thank you for that, and maybe we'll stop there and deal with any unanswered questions or concerns at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so you're looking for any questions on the correspondence from council?
That's correct. Or from the applicant or the council.
Okay, did you want to just complete the verbal report and then do
Yes.
it under, okay, so maybe just complete the verbal report, section 34.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's 30. I'm
Yes,
confused.
34. It should,
Section 34.
yes, I think those numbers were incorrect that I quoted. They should have been all 33, and I apologize for that with respect to the written comments. So that was a typo there.
You've got to love technology. That happens. Okay, so maybe just complete the verbal section and then we'll proceed into the
Yes.
having people comments.
And for clarity, the verbal responses should be 34.1 and 34.2 as well. So
Okay.
so verbal report on general or telephone inquiries and or attendances at the municipal office. 34.1, telephone inquiry from Paul Gullis dated May the 19th, 2020, request for more information, which was followed up by the emails above. And item 34.2, telephone inquiry from Richard Trybursky dated May the 19th, requested more information, which was followed up by emails above. Technically, I should have placed those at the top before the emails, but in the haste of getting the agenda done, haste makes waste.
Not a problem. We have all the information.
Very good.
Right, so we'll start into the section where we do oral or written presentations by those in attendance. And I'm going to start with going to the applicant, Ms. Burnett, to ask if she has comments and maybe for her to just enlighten us on the change on the water setback from 17 meters to 15.5, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's worth pointing out that 20 years ago, the Dunlops purchased this property. The cottage that exists there today is virtually the same as the one that that was there the time that they purchased and for conceivably years before that. And so what we're really asking for here is to just bring things into compliance to the point that the edge of the cottage of where it exists today. We're not asking to be moving any further, and to maybe add a little bit more context as well. The Dunlops have had a little bit of kind of challenging circumstances considering the makeup of the land, specifically to do with kind of the bedrock outcrop that kind of comes from the back of the property. And they've really had kind of the environment in mind from the beginning, I would say, considering they knew that to place the cottage, you know, over the footprint and not moving any closer to the water, but not moving any further back. If they didn't move any further back, they were able to avoid actual blasting into the rock face. So just as a kind of a point of notice for that, I'd like to say. And when it comes to the discrepancy, I guess, in the or the change rather from the 17 meters to the 15.5, in an effort to respond as best we could to public comment, we actually reached out to the surveyor who, or the survey company who did the original plans. And so we were lucky enough to speak with Mr. Kevin Smith there, who was able to give us a response about the differences between the former high water mark that surveyors used to kind of define these boundaries, and then rather now the water's edge. And as we know, the water's edge is a line that is not static, it fluctuates. And so for us, the difference was that he was able to provide an updated sketch to show that right now that southwest corner is sitting at 15.9 meters of the setback from the proper line, the water's edge. And rather we kind of simplify it to 15.5 to allow for a little bit of fluctuation and give that almost a buffer between the water's edge and then the setback to that southwest corner, to give a little bit more context.
Okay, thank you. That helps to explain the differences, and certainly we did also receive an updated document this morning, which I think Mr. Ledecky provided to council and probably to members of the public as well from Howe and Bradley. That was provided to everyone. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I just wanted to be certain that everyone had that, including the sketch, which clearly shows the shoreline to be very irregular anyways. Now, are there any members of the public who want to speak to this application? And if you do, could you just put up your hand so I can acknowledge you? Okay, I'm giving it a little extra time because internets are at different speeds. I'm not seeing anyone who wants to speak to this application.
Well, if I could, Mayor Love, it's Paul Gulliff, so I could just say thank you to you, and thank you to Silas for answering our questions. I think we really just, we're curious about the process more than the detail, and we leave it up to your good hands to figure out that this is, in keeping with all the rules and regulations. But thank you for helping us understand. It's been really benefit to us as we think about the future of our property next door, which we're considering putting a cottage on in the future. So thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Silas.
You're very
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Gullis. And I would encourage you to do a general inquiry or to further investigate the changes that were made to the official plan for the County of Renfrew, because some of them may affect your plans for the future. And I'm sorry, but this was imposed on us by the province, and I really do want to, encourage you to work through the challenges that await.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm sure, so that you
Timing
too.
is everything, right? Oh, God.
Absolutely. So give yourself lots of time and
All right.
investigate.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, no problem. If there's no one else who wants to speak to this application, don't see any further hands. I'm going to ask, are there questions or discussion by council? And I see Councillor Poplinski would like to speak. Councillor Poplinski.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mayor Love. My only comment was that I just wanted confirmation from Mr. Gullis that all his questions have been answered. Okay, I know he's thanked the council and everybody for doing what they're doing and so on. But I just want to make sure that all the questions have been answered.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Is there any further comment or discussion from council? Don't see any. So with that, Mr. Lerbetsky, I guess if you could just identify for number 37, please.
We'll still, pardon me, Mayor Love, if I may, we'll still continue with item number 36. We'll go back to the recommendation that is within that planning report. If
Okay.
you wouldn't mind just going back to that report and just so that you familiarize yourself, and that would be.
If I may, Mayor Love, I did include the wording in your chat if you wanted to have a look.
Okay. All right. So I just want to go back. Mr. Lerbetsky, could you tell us what page the recommendation is on the zoning amendment report?
Pages 98 to 101.
Okay, that helps me. And
So the actual recommendation is page 101.
okay, so if council could turn to page 101 of the package, you'll see the recommendation of the County of Renfrew on this application. Mr. Lerbetsky, do you want to speak to that or read the recommendation?
I'll read the recommendation, Mayor Love. That subject to the preparation of a favorable scoped EIS, which is an environmental impact study, a site plan and site plan agreement, and any additional concerns or information raised at the public meeting, the zoning bylaw amendment be passed. Just to speak to that comment, the County of Renfrew always stipulates the requirement of an environmental impact study. And so it's a decision of council that I need made by resolution. And I believe the CAO clerk may have drafted some wordings for ease of council to understand. And further, with respect to site plan and site plan agreement, we don't do site plan agreements as the norm, their recommendation, but the site plan itself is always presented to the chief building official at the time of the request for a building permit. And the site plan is reviewed based on the current zoning or any amendments thereto. And it is just to confirm that the development will occur with respect to the way the zoning amendment has been prepared.
Okay, so this is the recommendation of Renfrew County, but it is not a requirement of Renfrew County. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it is a decision of council, as council has many times had this discussion about environmental impact studies. And as I mentioned to Mr. Gullis in either a telephone conversation or communication, that council has dealt with kind of a similar situation with the tour rezoning that recently happened, and it too was a new cottage that was being rebuilt. And lo and behold, Mr. Gullis advises me that his dad built the tour cottage way back in the day. So he totally understands and appreciated that.
Okay, now I guess I'll turn it over to Ms. Platt. Sue, you had something you wished to say?
No, I didn't. I'm just making notes for Silas.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't sure. I thought, so council has heard what Renfrew County has recommended. So I need to know from council, are you going to ask for an environmental impact study? We will get a site plan, and we don't typically ask for a site plan agreement. The site plan, as Mr. Lerbetsky indicated, will come with the building permit process. So I need to know from council, are you of a mind to require an environmental impact study? I see Councillor Bromwich's hand up. Councillor Bromwich.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We've been here before. And from what I read on this application is that there doesn't seem to be any real major attack of the water system or possible destruction of habitat with the new setup they're going to put in here. I would like to see development continue in this regard without the regulations that are being dumped on us. I mean, they're even getting worse now that we have the new plan out there, and we're trying to make it easier for people to put their new cottages in play, and they're improving their systems. They're not taking away from the original site plan, making it worse. They're actually improving the septic systems. We do have a septic inspector here that will probably go in there and check and make sure that the new septic system is installed properly. And to me, this added expense on EIS for these people is just another burden for development in our township. So I would say go without the EIS and advise the cottager that if there is any damage to the environment due to the actions of not having EIS, that could rest on their shoulders for the damage is done. So as long as they're aware of what they're doing. And that's the way I would go with it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other members of council who want to speak to this? Councillor Poplinski.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Love. I think that I know it is a recommendation by the county. However, we've had a practice of looking and judging every case on its own merit. And I think we should continue to do that in the best interest of everyone, because I'm fairly familiar with that property. And I would be inclined to not request the environmental impact study unless someone else can show that it needs to be done in this particular case. So I would suggest no, we do not do it. Thank you.
Okay, so anyone else on council want to speak to this? No, I'm not seeing any desire to request an environmental impact study. If I'm misreading this, someone put your hand up if you want it. I'm not seeing any real desire to ask for that study, Mr. Lerbetsky. I will note for Mr. Gullis's sake that at the moment it is a recommendation. I don't know with the new official plan whether these sorts of studies will be a requirement or not. I haven't got the details yet, but just again, that's another, be aware. There could be some studies actually required at this point because of the new official plan for those developing after March 26th. Okay, Mr. Lerbetsky, I don't see any desire from council. Do you need a motion to not require one? Okay, do you have some for that? Or do you want me to just, how am I going to do this? That the council does not require an environmental impact study for application DUN-2020-06. Would that cover it?
Yes, it will.
So could I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Wilmer, seconded by Councillor Bromwich. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, council. That's good. So now, Now that we've ticked the boxes, I guess, did you want to speak to the draft bylaw?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lowe. So the draft bylaw will be amended from the 17 meters to 15.5 meters. And I have already amended in anticipation of council's decision to deal with the bylaw as such in the afternoon meeting.
Okay, again, it is coming to the council meeting this afternoon.
That is correct.
So if there's nothing further on that application, that completes the business. And now who's reading number 38? Sue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council is also required by section 34:14.5 to inform the public at the public meeting of who is entitled to appeal to the local appeal tribunal under sections 34:11 and 19 as follows. Section 34:11, if council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 120 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Section 34:19, not later than 20 days after the giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made a written submission to council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I certainly appreciate everyone's patience and willingness to participate in this Zoom meeting so that we could proceed with some planning matters. And with that, I'm going to declare that this meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.